And we had a little bit of experience, obviously, writing methodology historically, so it wasn't something that we were afraid of. We 3 years ago, I could see a lot of these problems coming. I could see a lot of the legitimate criticisms. The court, what was the cause of those legitimate criticisms? What role could the standard have played in avoiding that, and didn't play? And then how would you write a standard in the modern age, knowing everything we now know about where the market is going? In all fairness, Vera was a pioneer across so many different environmental categories of trying to figure out what market mechanisms might even work. And they did an amazing job of creating on-ramps for lots of different types of projects into the market. So, kudos. And we worked very closely with them for many years, still do. But we could see that mistakes were made, and we could see that we felt that the standard had a stronger role, should have had a stronger role in it. And the other thing so that was one part of why we thought there might need to be another one in the market. We thought, well, without competition, real competition, and I recognize there are other standards out there, and I apologize for if any, I'm not implying that they're not real competition, but certainly what we saw in the market with our larger customers, that it was a monopoly, and that wasn't really healthy. That wasn't forcing good decisions in some cases. That was part of what we saw, and we thought that those things need to be addressed. Part of what we saw was that the criticism was driving the market. If you think about a market, you have willing buyer, willing seller, right? Ultimately, that's a market. And then, yes, we've all the people in the middle trying to make it work. But the willing buyer and willing seller both have some level of risk in the transaction, right? Is the willing seller getting enough to support the change that they want to make? Is the buyer getting a decent price that allows them to achieve what they're trying to achieve? And they share a bit of risk. What I saw as a result of the criticisms is that the risk tilted enormously towards the money end, which is often what happens. So it's not somewhat unique in the carbon business, but the risk tilted. But what was lost in that is that it's tilting away from communities. So when you have less risk for the companies that are at the buying end of the market, you have more risk for the communities that are at the selling end, because now they are not able, their ability to generate enough value from their natural assets is diminished significantly. And so we thought that that wasn't science. These were policy decisions that were being made to assuage a market that was bruised by the problems, right? And so clearly both sides need to participate in this category more than any other category. Both sides need to have an equitable solution. So part of the answer was that with Equitable Earth is there has to be a more balanced approach to inclusion of the communities in all the important decisions that ensure that the project is designed in a way that gives them the benefits that they need, because ultimately they don't have to do this. This is a voluntary market for them as well. They have options with the land, and the options that they were pursuing, they'd been surviving with for generations. So we're asking them to somehow pick a different option that they're not sure they're going to be able to survive on. And every time they turn around, we're cutting the opportunity down and saying, I'm sorry, it's too risky for the multi-million-dollar corporations. And so that just bothered me a bit. Like, I love multi-million-dollar corporations. I don't get me wrong, but those of you that are my clients listening to this, please don't take this the wrong way. But it just seemed unfair and unbalanced, and that ultimately it was short-sighted, because the sustainability is important to both sides. Both sides need sustainability long-term of these projects, and that means an equitable share of risk and an equitable share of reward across that void, and we weren't seeing it. So Earth decided to work closely with community leaders, and we have a history of working with community leaders, so it was easy for us. We were able to pull together a small coalition. It wasn't a vast coalition in the beginning. It got bigger towards the end when we were able to engage a lot more companies in the process, a lot more developers. But at the beginning, it was a relatively small coalition. And the goal was just, how would you do it now, knowing everything that went wrong? How would CCP is required, right? So how you design that in, right? FPIC has to be robust. Design that in. That all these mishaps happened. Tighten control. Put the standard in control of baseline setting. Put the standard in control of performance monitoring, right? We knew all of those things. But at the same time, modernize the approach so that you're not just measuring deforestation the way we've done it for 50 years, looking at Landsat images and trying to figure out, interpret them to see whether deforestation has happened, which, by the way, is very difficult to do in Kenya. But the but you're also looking at degradation, because what we know from being on the ground is that degradation of forests can happen for decades before a forest ever shows up as deforested. And those emissions are real emissions that are a substantial amount of the carbon stock of the forest, but they're never being counted. They're not counted in any of the ways that people typically count. So we felt it was very important to include degradation. We also felt it was important that that these projects have a life beyond carbon neutrality for global society in 2050. So that if you've taken on the task of stopping deforestation and you're protecting a forest as a community, and it's now growing back and restoring itself, you should benefit from that too. You should be able to benefit from when that carbon stock increases into the future, until of course, at some point it's going to plateau at a new carbon stock, but for at the maximum. But so we looked at a lot of these different things. There's a long way around of saying that we felt the motivation was about equity for communities. The motivation was about efficiency of a methodology that was using modern IT as a way to verify projects. It was using modern and putting the standard much more in control of quality. One of the things that I heard too many times in the market in the period of criticism was standards saying publicly that they were not responsible for quality. I just thought, well, who the hell is? Like, it's your standard.
If you're not you, yeah.
If not you, who the hell is responsible for quality? And I think that philosophy and that statement led to a lot of problems, to be honest. And so the idea behind Equitable Earth from the get,
because it put the onus back on the projects, right? And then it bifurcates the signal completely.
Which essentially means you're at the mercy of the bad actors. Your whole system is at the mercy of the bad actors, right? Because the good actors are going to behave themselves and do everything right, and you won't need to police them, and you won't need to worry about their quality. But the bad actors are not. They're going to take any market opportunity. There's always a small portion of bad actors, and so it doesn't matter. I don't care what field of human endeavor you're talking about. There's somebody that's going to take advantage. So I just seems silly to not put more control in place and not take more responsibility. So one of the principles of Equitable Earth was stand behind the quality of every project, stand behind the quality of every credit. So this notion of a discontinuity in an asset that you have issued is a bit unique. Can't think of another example in modern business where an entity that issues an asset that has a financial value to investors is all of a sudden stepping away from that asset that they issued and saying, "Oh, sorry." And so that
we can't stand behind it, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we said from the beginning, okay, no, everything. How would we design this if the buck stops with the standard and not with the projects, and that projects and therefore the standard? How do you make sure no bad projects get in? How do you make sure that you don't allow gaming of the system?